All right, we now have the You're Live, so welcome to the stream. Um, just sitting back chilling on a Wednesday. I've been real lax on the videos, but that's all right. We'll get them done sooner or later. uh, I was kind of looking back through my books here because I know I mentioned some of them, but I did want to re-speak on them. We got Insurgent Mexico, which is the story um, that was followed by John Reed's accounts when he was in Mexico during the Mexican Revolution, sorry. And it follows how he kind of tracked Pancho Villa during the revolution. Yeah, in 1910, Mexican peasant Pancho Villa led a rebellion against the wealthy landowners and fought to redistribute land to the poor Mexican peons who worked it for the absentee owners in what had been called the First Socialist Revolution. Originally published as a series of newspaper dispatches, Insurgent Mexico was written by the American journalist John Reed, who lived with the Mexican rebels, made friends with Pancho Villa, and was nearly killed during a battle with Mexican government forces. So yeah, I mean, it's not a very big book, about 300 pages, but it's interesting. And like I said, they're all as like each chapter is like a newspaper dispatch, and it kind of talks about each thing. So it's a nice inside look at the Mexican Revolution. I recommend anybody who's never read it to pick it up and give it a shot. Like I said, it's 300, a little over 300 pages, but the chapters are real short because they're like newspaper dispatches. So you can just read it a chapter or two at a time, and I think you'll enjoy it. It's a nice look at history that not a lot of people really are aware of. But yeah. In 1862, Emperor Louis Napoleon Bonaparte III of France sent military forces to occupy Mexico. After suffering a defeat at the Battle of Puebla on May the 5th, 1862, celebrated in Mexico as the holiday Cinco de Mayo. We also discussed that. The French armies crushed the Mexicans and sent the elected president Benito Juarez into exile. In April 1864, an Austrian aristocrat was installed with French backing as Emperor Maximilian I, which I again said Maximilian I, I think, was the emperor they had as the French occupation. But yeah, during our Civil War, the 1860s, um, they had an issue with France. But anyway, it would eventually drive Maximilian out towards the end of the decade. And you would see Mexico kind of push back. But I was kind of wrong on Cinco de Mayo. I thought it was a celebration of breaking free of France, but it was just a celebrating of the Battle of Pueblo, in which they crushed the French. The French came back and destroyed the Mexicans and occupied it. But, like I said, it's an interesting history. What else do I have here? I thought this was an interesting book. Geisha. And it's all about the Japanese geisha and what really goes on with the culture of the geisha and how it's ingrained in Japanese history. But yeah, another great book to have. An interesting look at the culture of the geisha. University of California Press, ucpress.edu. So, nice little educational book on that portion of Japanese culture. I've just kind of gathered a selection of books here on my bed to kind of go over. If you do enjoy any, of course, you can look them up and see what you want to check out. Um, this one I found real interesting. Myths of the Cherokee. It was written by a man named James Mooney, and it covers a lot of Cherokee culture and mythology, but it also talks a lot about their history, their language. In fact, they have a copy of the Cherokee alphabet in the very front, which I believe they called themselves the Salagi, not the actual Cherokee. But yeah. So late teen 80s is when he kind of started gathering this information. What else do I have here? Oh, kind of kills my ribs a bit to move like that. Oh yeah. I feel it's kind of a shortened example, but from 1905 to 2005. It's a Time Life book, 100 events that shook our world. And says, like I said, I think it's kind of short and encapsulated, but it's interesting. Let's see what else we got here. Oh yeah, just a short little, but from circa 1700 to 1870, the reading of Cosmopolitan Africa. So some of the African continent during that age. Very interesting little read. Like I said, it's a short little book. Yeah, it's not even 100 pages. Wow. Actually, it's 100 pages on the dot, but yeah. It's a short little volume there. This is one I need to pick back up and reread, but I can kind of recommend it. It's an interesting story on the history of China right around the turn of the century, late 1800s, early 1900s. There had been a lot of Western tourists looking around China, and they kind of explored and took advantage of um, much of what the ancient civilization had to offer. And many people felt it, many Chinese felt it was unjust, and they started fighting back. And this is, like I said, late 1800s, early 1900s. This is a bit about that, the Boxer Rebellion. Um, it's the story of China's war with foreigners that shook the world in the summer of 1900. And it's a peek at the use of martial arts. But once they started using guns to fight back, yeah, they were quickly defeated. But it's an interesting little look at 1900 China. Um, Pulled back out my documents of Western Civilization book. That's volume 2. This is volume 1. So it has Western Civilization documents that are important to history, or that we can kind of looking at from the time of the Mesopotamians and the Fertile Crescent all the way through modern day into the U.S. and so on. And I know we've mentioned the Sykes-Picot Agreement following World War I that allowed the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. That was a big part of, I feel, the hatred that much of the Middle East has. It's not solely that, because with recent wars and the killing of innocents, who can blame them either? But another Time Life book was the Middle East. We kind of get a peek at each a number of countries and some of the events. The terrorists, division of the faithful, women in Islam, the paradox of Islam. Faces of the Middle East, the World of Islam, which shows a nice little breakdown of where much of the faith exists. And again, it's not solely in the Middle East. But nice little book, little reference book. And finally, the one I have up here with me. It's a textbook. It was for my history of African Americans. And it's from slavery to freedom. But it was from, my history of African Americans class. And it talks a lot about Africans being brought over and being used as slave labor. But it also talks about liberation, civil rights, and so on. So I found that kind of interesting. But I've just brought up some of these books to kind of give an example of the reference materials I do have. This is just, like I said, tiny portion. Like I said in here, I have stacked in stacks against the wall here, and it's still not even all the books I own. I literally have a small library of books. So I can't wait till I can access all of it again. Let's look at this, the Middle East a bit. Uh, do, do. 32, the impact of oil. One of the first pages is the birthplace of three religions, which it is. It's a homie. It's the home of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So definitely something to kind of remember. But the Abrahamic religions. What else we got? First Clash of Cultures. A great war creates a new Middle East. Yeah, this is in reference to the effect World War I had on the. To be fair, the Ottoman Empire was barely holding together, but they basically said, "All right, we're going to divide it now that we won into service to our nations." Because, I mean, the Ottoman Empire backed Germany and a couple other nations. I can't remember all of the nations in World War I. There's a lot less fanaticism and fervor over World War One as there is World War Two. But yeah, when the Ottoman Turks took the losing side in World War One, a new map of the area was created by victorious Britain and France, and many of the nations that emerged, Iraq, Kuwait, Palestine, and others, were creations of European political necessity, often bearing little or no resemblance to the diverse cultures, religions, and loyalties of their inhabitants. So, honestly, it was more divided up for the nations like Britain and France than it was for the cultures and peoples that had lived there. World War II, the birth of a nation. Of course, Israel in 1947. It's either 47 or 48. And the new age of oil, the rise of Islamism, and those stuck in the middle. But yeah, you have Sunni and Shiite groups. Which the majority, as it shows here, is mainly um, Shiite, or no, Sunni, which is the orange, about 90%. Shiites are the other 10%. So it's kind of the split. Um, in Islam, why there's so much fighting. Like when Saddam Hussein had control of Iraq, the Sunnis, even though they're the majority of um, Muslims in almost every other country, were a minority in Iraq. But it was the Sunnis that led the Shiites. So they were basically, the Shiites were persecuted. Saddam was a Sunni, and even though they were in the minority in the country of Iraq, in fact, it looks like the only country where the majority are Shiites are Iran. The rest of the country, the majority are Sunnis. Well, Iran and Iraq, but well, Azerbaijan. I didn't see that, but yeah, it's got a majority Shiite as well. So, but like I said, the Sykes-Picot Act basically divided the Ottoman Empire up, not for the people or the cultures, but just for European powers. Um, because honestly, if they were more aware, or well, not that they weren't aware, but cared more for what was going on, they would have divided up like parts of Iran and Iraq and maybe even Azerbaijan um, as more of a Shiite nation. Uh, Even the Kurds would have their own nation in I believe it's northern Iraq, um, which is where the majority of them are. So there should have been a Kurdistan. But yeah, the rest of the nations are majority Sunnis, which, like I said, about 90% of the world Muslim population is. Oh, yeah, and the background of the world's Muslim population. Interesting little fact here. Only 18% of the world's Muslims are Arab. The rest, 82%, non Arab. But yeah, who's who in the Middle East? Just a collection of interesting names: Osama bin Laden, Mahmoud Abbas, Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, Abdullah II, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Yasser Arafat, Bashar Assad, Hafiz Assad, um, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, Ehud Barak, David Ben Gurion, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Muammar Gaddafi, um, Islam Haniya, Rafiq Hariri, Hussein, Hamid Karzai, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, T.E. Lawrence. For you who are not too initiated with the Middle East, you wonder who's T.E. Lawrence, you'll better know him as Lawrence of Arabia. Um, there's also Nouri al-Maliki, Hosni Mubarak, Pervez Musharraf, Hassan Nasrallah, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Benjamin Netanyahu, Ehud Omar, Saddam Hussein, Fawad Siniora, Grand Ayatollah Ali Husseini Sistani, and Ahmad Yassin. And it kind of gives a little bit of information on each. So, like I said, it's fairly interesting. Glossary of terms. Yep. The Middle East is home to a broad diversity of peoples: Persians and Turks, Bedouins and Kurds, Sunnis and Shiites. Two great cultural forces unite many of them. The first is the religion of Islam, which has dominated these lands for 1,300 years. The second is the Arabic language. Arabs define themselves as those who speak this tongue, in which Islam's holy book, the Quran, is written. Turks, Jews, Iranians, and others who don't speak Arabic are thus distinct cultures. Look closer, and more diversity appears. In this vast crescent of countries, there is a dazzling mosaic of nations, races, sects, languages, and dreams. So, a little bit of background on Islam. A little background on the Middle East. One thing that does disappoint me, the Middle East was early in the religion a home of scientific innovation, thought, invention, learning, understanding. In fact, the city of Baghdad was a wonderful intellectual cultural center. But the religiosity, the religious fervor that overtook Islam overtook the rest of the Middle East. So it kind of fell apart as a religious powerhouse or an intellectual powerhouse. Became more of a religious place of fervor, you know. The terrorists, the impact of oil. So yeah, the history of the 20th century is written in petroleum. Thirsty for oil, European powers carved up the remains of the Ottoman Empire in the years of World War One, with the eye towards ensuring their mastery of the Middle East in perpetuity. For when the region was believed to house the largest repositories of oil on the planet. And so, like I said, following World War One, the Ottoman Empire was carved up thanks to the Sykes-Picot Agreement. Let's see, Christians, the Saudis, who I do not agree with. The Saudis should not be allies of the U.S. when it's like 14 of the 18 9/11 hijackers come from Saudi Arabia. But because they have oil and money, they're big buddies, and we now sell them military bombs that they're using to kill children in Yemen. The Egyptians, the Israelis, the Palestinians, the Lebanese, the Syrians, the Jordanians, the Iraqis, the Iranians, the Kurds, yeah, northern Iraq, part of Syria, part of Turkey, and part of Iran. You can kind of see it right here. The dark brown is the Kurdish area, but it's in between all these little countries. Like I said, part of Syria, Turkey, Iran and Iraq. It should have been its own country, Kurdistan, but no. Population in Turkey, there's 14 to 22 million Kurds. Iran has 5 to 6. Iraq has 4 to 6. And Syria has 1 to 2. They all measure in the millions. So on the low end, you could have 14 plus, there's 19, 20, 24 million. The Turks, the Recep Erdogan, the Afghans, which Afghanistan and Pakistan, yeah, a lot of problems. The Gulf states, which consist of Yemen, Oman, the UAE, and Kuwait. So yeah, here's where Yemen is. The big green area is Saudi Arabia. The UAE is this tiny little thing here. And right now, the UAE and Saudi Arabia are attacking Yemen with U.S. supplied weapons. But it don't matter as long as we make a profit. What else we got? The Middle East in modern times. World War I creates new nations. Yeah, because the Ottoman Empire sided with Germany. There it is. Mention of it. Sykes-Picot Agreement. Yeah. It was put in control of their allies, which is the big part of it. Ataturk, that was in 1919. It's almost the 100-year anniversary of that divvying up the Middle East. In 1948, Israel was born. So 60, 70 years this year. 70 years old. And don't get me wrong, there should have been a home for those of the Holocaust, but much of modern Israel is acting a fair bit like the Nazis in their treatment of the Palestinians, the way the Nazis treated the Jewish people during the Holocaust. And that's where my quarrel with modern day Israel comes in. They also like to interfere in British and American politics, which is wrong. They need to stick to their own issues. 1953, the U.S. coup in Iran. Shah Reza Pahlavi. Putting the Shah of Iran into power. But in 79, 26 years later, the Ayatollah took back Iran. So, again, US, British, and a lot of other countries meddling in the Middle East when they didn't need to be. The Suez Canal. The PLO and Arafat. Yasser Arafat. I would list him as a mixed bag. Committed a lot of violence, a lot of wrongs, but in the end, he was trying to fight for the liberation of the Palestinian people, which again, they were kind of just pushed out by people who said, well, we're going to reinstall Israel. And like I said, modern day Israel kind of acts like the Jews treated or it kind of acts the way the Nazis treated the Jewish people during the Holocaust. It's shameful. The 6-Day War, Jordan's Black September, terror at the Munich Olympics, the Yom Kippur War, Arab oil embargo, breakthrough at Camp David, and then Iran leads an Islamic uprising, taking back Iran from the Shah and stuff. The Soviets invade Afghanistan. And then 80 to 88, Iran and Iraq's 8-year war. 81, Israel takes out Saddam's nukes. Also in 81, Sadat assassinated. 82, Israel invades Lebanon. 83, the U.S. barracks bombing. 86, the U.S. bombs Libya. 87, the Palestinian Intifada. 88, Saddam attacks the Kurds. 89, bin Laden becomes Jihad's boss. 91, the first Desert Storm. 93, the Oslo Accords. 95, Rabin is assassinated. 96, the triumph of the Taliban. That was their taking of Afghanistan. 98, the U.S. Embassy attacks. 200, Intifada, Iran 2. Also in 2000, Al-Qaeda attacks the USS Cole. And then 2001, America under assault. 2001, the U.S. topples the Taliban. 2003, the fall of Saddam. And then 2003 to 2006, the insurgency, meltdown in Iraq. 2005, murder in Lebanon. 2005, new day for Gaza. 2005, Iran's new leader. 2006, Hamas wins at the polls. 2006, Israel and Hezbollah go to war. But that's as far as it goes. But yeah, a little taste of the Middle East. Anyway, I think that's enough for now. I'm going to hop off here and get me a bite. But as always, educate thyself, as we just showed. Think, study, learn. Education, self education. It's important, it's huge. But, guys, gals, and anyone out there, hey, I love you. I'm sure there's other people that love you. You always have someone that cares about you, even though it may seem hopeless. So don't worry. For now, I'm out. Later.